So take a second and just look around the space you're in right now, like your living room, maybe your office or your kitchen.
Right, the places we spend all our time.
Exactly. We pour just an immense amount of energy into these spaces, you know. We paint the walls, we carefully arrange the furniture, we basically build these little sanctuaries to protect us from the outside world.
We want to feel safe.
Yeah, and we naturally expect our homes to be, well, the one place in the universe that actually makes logical sense. But what happens when the physical rules of that space they simply stop working?
When the environment starts feeling inexplicably wrong.
Yes. And more importantly, how desperate are we as human beings to force a rational explanation onto something that is just like completely irrational?
Oh, we're incredibly desperate. I mean, that need for logic, it's fundamentally about survival. We rely on the physical rules of our environment to stay grounded.
Right.
Like if a glass shatters, we assume it fell. If a door slams, we blame a draft. When those basic rules of physics break down, our brains just scramble to patch the holes.
Because the alternative is just too terrifying.
Exactly. Admitting that we don't understand the rules of our own reality it's too destabilizing to even process.
And that psychological scrambling is really the core of today's deep dive. We're looking at a first-hand, honestly incredibly unsettling account from a Bengali live storytelling platform called Pretkotha.
Yeah, it's a fascinating source.
It really is. The source features a guest named Debasmita, and she recounts the absolute destruction of her childhood friend's family. We'll refer to her friend as Neha. So this family moved into a suspiciously cheap 2-story house, and what follows is terrifying.
Very terrifying.
But our mission today isn't just to, swap ghost stories around a campfire. We are going to deconstruct the actual anatomy of an escalation. We want to trace exactly how a haunting evolves from minor, easily rationalized environmental glitches into a complete psychological collapse and ultimately physical possession.
It's a textbook escalation.
Okay, let's unpack this because the beginning of the story is so sneaky.
Yeah, what stands out immediately in this case study is how subtle the initial testing phase really is. You have this family, a father, a mother, the teenage daughter Neha, and her younger brother Bipo.
Right, a totally normal family.
Completely normal. They get a tip from a broker about a newly available, very affordable 2-story house. They move in, and for the first 20 days, the environment is totally quiet. They're just settling into their routine.
But then the house starts probing their defenses.
Exactly. It starts testing the waters.
And it probes them in ways that specifically target their daily habits, which is so creepy. So the family had been eating vegetarian food since they moved in. But on day 20, the mother decides to finally cook a chicken dinner.
A seemingly harmless choice.
Right. They eat, she gathers the leftover bones into a bowl, leaves them on the kitchen counter, and just goes to sleep. But the next morning, she walks in to find those chicken bones scattered entirely across the kitchen floor.
And they aren't just dropped, right?
No, they are chewed, physically chewed on. And her immediate reaction, she blames rats.
Which perfectly illustrates that psychological patching we just talked about.
Wow.
It's the onset of the denial phase. A rat is a biological problem.
Yeah, you can buy a trap for a rat.
Exactly, it's manageable.
But I have to push back a little here because there's a line between a defense mechanism and sheer delusion, because the anomalies get so much worse so fast.
Oh, absolutely. The Kachuri incident.
Yes. So a few weeks later, during the Kali Puja festival, Neha heads up to the roof, taking some kachuri, which is that traditional blessed rice and lentil prasad to just eat in the cool evening air.
Right.
She sets the container down under a dim light, opens it, and sitting right on top of this strictly vegetarian, religiously blessed food is a massive raw fish bone.
Which is a profound violation of their religious boundaries.
Completely. I mean, she freaks out, leaves it there, and runs downstairs to grab her mother. But by the time they both get back to the roof, the kachuri has been violently smeared all over the concrete.
Like someone intentionally mashed it into the ground with their bare hands.
Yes. But that fish bone, it is sitting perfectly untouched right in the center of the mess. And incredibly, the parents rationalize it again. They tell themselves a bird must have dropped the fish bone.
Even though a bird lacks the physical capability to smear rice into concrete like a mortar and pestle.
It's absurd.
It is, and let's not forget that they never actually caught a rat in any of those traps they set for the chicken bones earlier. But this isn't just stubbornness,
What is it then?
Think of the human brain like a computer dealing with cognitive load. Your brain is running the "my home is safe" operating system. When a piece of data enters that completely contradicts that system.
Like an impossible fish bone.
Right, or a chewed chicken bone in a locked room. The system threatens to crash. So, to prevent a total psychological freeze, the brain forces a hard reboot to the simplest, most mundane explanation available, no matter how flimsy it is.
Oh, I like that analogy. It's like the brain forcibly closing an application that's taking up too much memory. And we see that forced reboot happen again with the father. He's working late, it's 1:30 in the morning, the house is dead silent. Suddenly, he hears a distinct voice whisper the word, "Hey," directly into his ear.
It's horrifying.
Right. It's so unnerving, he immediately shuts his laptop and goes to sleep. The next morning, he tells himself it was just an auditory hallucination from exhaustion. He just closes the application.
Hits ignore.
Yeah. But here's where it gets really interesting. It's like ignoring the check engine light on a car. At what point does the effort to rationalize the bizarre become more exhausting than just accepting that your house is compromised?
Well, the breaking point usually arrives when the physical evidence becomes too visceral to overwrite. For this family, that cognitive crash happens during Shivratri.
The Alta footprints.
Yes. The mother is finishing her prayers, and her feet are coated in alta, that traditional red liquid dye used in rituals. She leaves the dye in the hallway and steps out for a moment. When she returns, the illusion of normalcy completely shatters.
Right, because she finds a trail of red prints leading straight from the hall toward the children's bedrooms. But these aren't normal footprints.
No, and I want to emphasize the mechanics of those prints, because this is where the haunting really shifts. They weren't standard footprints, they were a chaotic mix of handprints and footprints, all in wildly different, mismatched sizes.
Like some massive, some tiny.
Exactly. It painted a picture of a disjointed, massive entity literally dragging itself across their floor, making a beeline for the kids' room.
And the denial is officially dead at that point, especially when they come back from a 10-day vacation to Siliguri shortly after.
Oh, the welcome home.
Yeah, they open their front door and are practically knocked over by the stench of rotting meat. The house is totally trashed. There are torn chicken feathers, a goat's horn, and an animal's eye just scattered everywhere.
You can't blame a bird or a rat for a goat's horn.
You really can't.
Yeah.
So they finally seek outside intervention. The mother ignores her husband's lingering skepticism and calls in a priest. But this is where human error just accelerates the danger.
Yes. The priest completely misreads the environment. He walks through this incredibly hostile space and misdiagnoses it as a simple Vastu defect.
Which is such a massive miscalculation. He treats it like an architectural energy block, like rearranging the furniture and tweaking the energy flow of the floor plan is going to solve a localized haunting.
He applies interior design logic to a spiritual infection. And worse, he tells them he can fix it with a cleansing ritual, but he schedules it for 14 days later.
Wow.
He inadvertently puts a 2-week countdown clock on the entity.
Think about that for a second. If you realize an intruder is hiding in your house, you don't give them a 2-week written notice before calling the police. You just provoke them.
And the entities immediately change their strategy.
They really do. The storyteller, Dibasmita, she actually visits the house during this exact 14-day window for Nea's birthday. They have a sleepover. 4 girls in one massive bed tucked safely under a mosquito net, bathed in the dim blue glow of a nightlight.
A very vulnerable setup.
Very. It's around 2:30 a.m., and they see a tall, impossibly thin woman in a sari casually walk right into the bedroom.
And this wasn't, a trick of the light or a fleeting shadow in the corner of their eye.
No, the entity walks straight up to the bed, leans over, and presses her face directly into the mosquito net. The fabric actually stretches and bows under the physical weight of her face, hovering right above the girls.
It's so invasive.
It takes one of them screaming and hitting the main light switch to make the room go empty. But the retaliation is just ramping up. The very next morning, they hear the maid screaming in the hallway.
The dining table incident.
Yeah, they run out, and the dry, heavy wooden dining table is inexplicably flooding. Water is pouring off the edges, soaking the floor, with no spilled pitcher and no plumbing nearby, just water manifesting out of thin air.
What's fascinating here is the tactical nature of these events. The entities know an eviction attempt is coming, so they start aggressively targeting the family's perimeter. The friends, the maid.
Right, because isolating the core family makes them weaker.
Exactly. Cut off their support system.
Yeah, and they get violent with that perimeter. That same frantic maid sits down a few minutes later to drink a cup of hot tea to calm her nerves. But instead of taking a sip, she inexplicably lifts the saucer and pours the scalding, boiling tea directly onto her own chest.
A horrific injury.
When they pull her away, she is sobbing, swearing that an invisible hand grabbed her wrist and forcefully pushed the boiling liquid onto her body.
And once the perimeter is terrified and pushed away, the entities turn completely inward. They start dismantling the family's internal structure, leading to total psychological and financial ruin.
And the speed of this collapse is breathtaking. Unprecedented, explosive anger issues erupt out of nowhere. Everyone is screaming at everyone. It peaks when the father, who is normally a super calm man, strikes Neha for the first time in her life over a trivial misunderstanding.
It's totally out of character for him.
Completely. And simultaneously, his livelihood evaporates. He deals in thread and his business mysteriously crashes. Within a month and a half, his bank accounts are completely drained. They are pushed to the absolute brink of ruin.
So we have to ask about causality here. What is the actual mechanism driving this ruin? Are the entities physically destroying his business ledgers? Probably not. What we are looking at is severe emotional contagion. The physical space of the house has become deeply sick, and it's acting like an emotional pathogen.
So what does this all mean? I keep coming back to the analogy of a compromised immune system.
Okay, how so?
Well, if your body is healthy and well rested, it fights off a virus easily. In this scenario, the house's immune system is the family's bond. It's their trust, their financial stability, their shared reality.
Right.
But imagine the worst financial stress you've ever felt. That sickening knot in your stomach when an unexpected bill arrives. Now imagine the very walls of your house weaponizing that exact feeling against you, amplifying it 100 times over.
It would be unbearable.
Once that psychological immune system is broken down by the sheer stress of bankruptcy and unexplainable rage, their defenses drop to zero, and the virus moves right in.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that's precisely how the entities bridge the gap. They break the family's minds so they can close the physical distance. The hostility isn't just terrifying them externally anymore, it's actively reshaping their personalities to mirror the toxicity of the environment.
And the physical distance completely vanishes. The mother wakes up in the middle of the night, and crouched in the dark corner of her bedroom is a featureless, pitch-black shadow.
Just watching her.
Yeah, a massive figure sitting with its knees pulled up, staring directly at her. She tries to scream for her husband lying right next to her, but her vocal cords are completely paralyzed.
The boundaries are just gone. And it closes in on Neha too.
Way too close. Neha is watching TV in her room, leaning against a solid wall, and she feels two distinct physical taps on her shoulder coming from the solid plaster behind her.
Nowhere is safe.
Later that same night, she rolls over in bed and she isn't alone. Sitting right on the edge of her mattress is a female entity. Its face is obscured by incredibly long hair, and it's just casually dangling its legs off the side of the bed.
Just sitting there.
Yeah, and Neha is frozen. Then the entity slowly reaches out and touches Neha's exposed hand. D-Boss Mita said Neha described the touch as feeling like a snake, ice cold, deliberate, and entirely unnatural.
They systematically dismantled every barrier. The emotional trust, the financial security, the perimeter of the house, and now the physical sanctity of their own beds. Which brings us to the climax of this escalation.
Where they target the weakest link, the youngest brother, Bipo.
Right.
Bipo is home alone one morning, and he goes into his attached bathroom to take a shower. He leaves the door wide open. While he's washing up, the temperature in the room plummets. It becomes freezing cold.
A classic sign of manifestation.
Yes. Bipo feels something rush right past him. He grabs his towel to leave, but an unseen force violently launches him across the room.
Yeah.
He is thrown headfirst into the heavy wooden door frame, splitting his head open.
The mother eventually breaks the door down and finds him unconscious in a pool of blood. But the physical head wound is really just the entry point for the possession.
Right. Bipo survives the injury, but the next day he spikes a 103-degree fever. He starts shaking and muttering, and then the behavioral shift happens.
This is where it gets incredibly dark.
It really does. Bipo starts tearing his own hair out by the roots, shoving it into his mouth. Then he starts chewing on his own fingers. He is literally biting the flesh off his knuckles until his hands are dripping blood.
Just brutal self-mutilation.
His mother walks in, sees this horror, and slaps him to snap him out of it, and Bipo stops. But when he looks up at her, Bipo is gone. His face twists into this deeply arrogant, aggressive sneer.
He's not the one driving anymore.
No. He snarls at his mother, asking how she dares lay a hand on him, and orders her out of his room.
At this point, the mother bypasses that priest who made them wait and brings in a Mulvi, an Islamic healer. And the Mulvey takes one look at Beepo from the doorway and immediately diagnoses that the boy hasn't just been possessed by a single spirit.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he's possessed by 3 or 4 distinctly bloodthirsty entities.
Oh, wow. And the exorcism that follows is an agonizing 3.5-hour battle. The Mulvey uses chants and holy water, and the entities inside Beepo fight back using the boy's body as a weapon.
They don't want to leave.
Not at all. Multiple overlapping voices scream out of Beepo's mouth. They mock the healer, laughing sarcastically. When the entities finally realize they are losing their grip, they force Beepo's hands to violently scratch and tear at his own face,
Trying to inflict as much permanent physical damage as possible before they are expelled.
Exactly. Finally, the boy just collapses on the floor, senseless. The entities are forced out.
But this raises an important question, right? Why did this happen to them specifically? And this is where a neighbor finally reveals the dark, hidden history of that bargain house.
The history they knew nothing about.
Right. Years prior, an old man lived there with his 2 sons and their wives. The old man relied on a government pension, but his sons were entirely out of control. They blew through the family's money on heavy drinking and gambling, taking out massive, unpayable loans.
The debt collectors were relentless,
Right.
constantly showing up, harassing them.
Exactly. The abuse from the debt collectors became so severe that the old man finally cracked. He ran away in the middle of the night and was never seen again,
Leaving the sons.
leaving the 2 sons and their wives trapped in that house with an insurmountable debt. Crushed by the financial ruin, vicious infighting broke out among the 4 of them. Driven completely mad by the hopelessness, they entered into a suicide pact, and all 4 killed themselves inside that house.
So because of the violently dismembering nature of their deaths, their spirits remain trapped in the physical space. Which brings everything we've talked about into this horrifying, crystal clear focus.
How so?
The entities didn't just haunt Neha's family, they actively forced Neha's family to reenact their tragedy.
Yes, this is the crux of environmental imprinting, sometimes called the stone tape theory. It asks whether a haunting is a sentient, calculating attack, or if it's more like a tragic emotional tape recorder playing on an endless loop.
Playing back the trauma.
Exactly. The old family was destroyed by financial ruin, so the entities dismantled the father's thread business. The old family was torn apart by violent, hateful infighting, so the entities infected Neha's family with explosive, uncharacteristic rage.
Wow.
The intense trauma of the dead quite literally became the script for the living. The building itself had recorded their despair, and it played it back, using Neha's family as the actors.
But the cost of playing out that script was permanent. Even though the exorcism was technically successful, Debo Smita shared a deeply unsettling piece of local lore.
The toll.
Yes, these entities always take something as a toll when they are forced to leave. Beepo survived the possession, but he was permanently altered.
In what way?
He lost his voice and can only speak in a severe stammer. He keeps his hands curled up tightly against his chest, almost like defensive claws. He remains deeply mentally scarred and completely isolated. Needless to say, the family abandoned the house immediately.
They escaped with their lives, but they walked into a space saturated with grief, and they proved that despair is highly contagious.
Which brings this chilling reality directly to your doorstep. We are so eager to move into new spaces to find a great deal on an apartment. We sign the lease, we arrange our bookshelves, we paint the walls a nice bright color, and we assume the space is just this blank slate.
But it rarely is.
We rarely, if ever, know the true history of the homes we inhabit. We don't know what kind of bitter arguments happened in that kitchen or what kind of profound grief was processed in that bedroom. We paint over the drywall, but we don't know what emotional residue is baked into the foundation.
Because architecture has memory. A building isn't just wood and concrete. It's a container for human experience. And sometimes that container is already full of something incredibly hostile.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over. If intense negative emotions, crushing financial stress, and profound tragedy can hypothetically stain a physical space, leaving a mark as permanent as a footprint in wet cement, what kind of emotional imprint are you leaving in the spaces you inhabit every single day?
It makes you think.
When you walk out of a room, are you leaving that space better or worse than you found it? Because sometimes the things that make a home feel inexplicably wrong, the things that make a home feel wrong are just the invisible things left behind by the people who thought they were entirely alone.